I want a scoop of the German chocolate
One scoop
custard.
German chocolate?
The abuse and everything started so young. We had never really, didn't have any sense of the original Mary. We were all just answering to Mary.
Okay, so let's see what we get when we multiply all this stuff out. First, outer is 6W, inner is 6W, last is 36.
Just having a diagnosis for other people to understand her didn't make me understand her any better. It never changed anything for me. I fought it because I didn't want these people to tell her, oh, da 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 da. I don't care. I don't want that. You know, you just be my mom and you just keep doing this, and I don't care what those people say. What do you want to do?
Well, not cut, you know that.
Yeah.
Not with the cans.
Can opener?
Can opener is here.
So, evidently bees aren't fond of hairspray. Did you know that? I took care of them. We no longer have
Hairspray
bees.
comes in
I
handy
know.
for so many things. I
And you know
miss
that-
having hairspray. I don't have any hair. Maybe I should buy
some just in
If I
case.
could buy
mean, I don't
Aquanet.
use it. Yeah,
Do they
Aquanet.
still have Aquanet?
Are you going to carry it in your purse and hit somebody with it?
Well, that's an idea. I have a few people
Can
in
you
mind.
swing your backpack that hard? You get mad enough, huh?
Yeah. Somebody could.
I can't say that I had every day in the same house and every day was the same. I don't think any 2 days were the same. They were all different. I never knew what to expect. There were days when my mom would say that we were going to go somewhere and I'd get all ready and then she'd have to go to her bar and cash a check and I'd wait all day in the parking lot and she'd never come out. Sometimes she'd have pigtails on and her clothes wouldn't match and we went to the park. And that's what we did all day. We just played in the park. We didn't go to school. We didn't necessarily have traditional meals. You know, we just ate whatever there was, or we just hop in the car and go and just drive and go wherever. Sometimes she was gone when I woke up. Mom didn't take care of me. I took care of my mom. She told me my whole life that I could never leave her because if I left her, there'd be no one to take care of her. It's not like I had a normal parent and a parent with multiple personality disorder. I had a parent that was an alcoholic with multiple personality disorder. That's what I had. That's all I had. From the time I was born until I was 18, that's what I had.
I see.
But the guy, the ID, the records with, it all checked out.
I'm Mary, and I was born in Stockton, California on June 2nd, 1946. We lived out on the little dairy. My dad had 20 acres, something like that. He had a little bit of an olive orchard. He had a really good garden. My dad could always make anything grow. I'd follow my dad around because it was much better to stick with my dad. My mother worked at the cannery, so when she was gone, I'd stick with Dad. But that was about the time that they made the laws about the homogenized and the pasteurized milk, and you couldn't no longer just put the milk in the cans and set it out for the guys to come pick it up. My dad couldn't afford buying the milking machines and all of that. He had always done everything by hand. So he was never the same. They sold the farm, moved into the edge of town. Daddy built the second house. He had built the one on the farm, and he built the second house that we lived in that he built from scratch. He had a third grade education, but he was a jack of all trades, master of none, you know. He could do a little bit of everything. He was amazing.
My grandfather, you know, sun rose and set in his butt, in my opinion. I mean, I did everything with him. I thought that he was all that. You know, he told me that he too was born a girl, and if I was a really good girl, I'd get to be a boy like him. And I tried every day to be the very best I could be so I could be a boy. Because boys got to do all the cool stuff. Girls had to get their hair combed and cook and clean, but boys got to play with rocks and climb trees, and I wanted to be a boy. But he lied. You know, as far as I knew, she was as close to her parents as I was until I got older.
I was the fifth child, the baby, the only girl. My brothers were 6 years older than I, 13 years older than I, and 16 years older than I. And there had been a boy born before him, but he died shortly after birth. The brother that was 13 years older than I, he had been having grand mal seizures, and my parents decided to put him in the state hospital. And they put him in there, and nobody ever really talked about him again. Nobody ever went to see him. My mother wrote April 1947, just before we took Ralph to hospital. That was how she, that was how she said it. Just before we took Ralph to hospital. Like they were just going for a checkup or something. Not that they were taking him there forever. Never to visit, never to talk about him again. I don't know how you keep a child for 13 years and then just toss them away. I never understood that. Except if you know more about my family, maybe you know that. My oldest brother, the one 16 years older than I, was like the good child. My parents both were very proud of him. Glennie could do no wrong. He left California. He went and joined the Air Force, got a woman pregnant, married her, and lived the rest of his time in Madison, Wisconsin. So now it was just Jim and I at home. Jim was the baby boy. I don't know what was between Jim and my father, but they did not get along. My dad would really wail into Jim. So I was taught at my mother's knee that no matter what Jim did to me, no matter whether he hurt me, no matter what he said, no matter what he did, I was never to cry or say anything about it. Because if I did and my dad heard about it, Daddy would beat Jim. It would be my fault, and my mother would be mad at me. That's the way it was. So I was kind of trained at my mom's need to be a victim. You don't talk, you don't say, because it's going to be your fault if somebody else gets in trouble or something. She was very adamant about it. Anytime Jim was there, it was not a good thing. Not a good thing. When I was 6, he brought a friend over to use me. I know it wasn't the first time. I know Jim had done it, but this was different. Jim had always made it like our little secret, like our playtime or something special, and then he would treat me special but this was different. He brought somebody else to use me, and it was a big joke between them. But I never stopped after that. I could hear Jim's car coming blocks and blocks and blocks away. I would hear it coming closer and closer, and I would pray. I'd lay in my bed and pray that he wouldn't come in and rape me that night. I just curled up in a little ball and hid. They couldn't touch me. The body, yes, but not me. I just curled up in a fetal position, and they just did whatever they wanted to the body.
Harry! Hagrid!
Hello, Hermione.
Oh, it's so good to see you.
Well, it's great to see you too.
What did you do to your glasses? Oh, here, let's repair it. It would have been seen.
No, they won't. Of course, I don't blame you, Harry, please.
They were starving him, Mum.
Before she was diagnosed, did she have names for any of these parts of herself?
No, I didn't know anything about names until she got diagnosed and started dealing with them. You know, I didn't know that all moms weren't like mine. I didn't know that this wasn't normal.
When I was 15, my girlfriend and I were bowling one night. Don and his friend came in. My girlfriend, everybody was in love with him. Just thought he was the best guy. He had this really nice car, he had this money, he had all this stuff, he had a job. And then he came to the house, and my mother fell in love with him too. And my dad, he kind of became my dad's best friend. They'd go fishing together, they'd talk, they'd do all this stuff. And then my parents invited him to move in. So he was in the bedroom where Jim had always been. Dawn, one night at dinner, asked my parents if we could get married. My mother said, "Oh, that's so exciting." So she was all for it. This is 15-year-old Hope. She thought all we had to do was finish school and everything would be okay. Hope was still there when we traveled back to Wisconsin. Before I was supposed to get married to Dawn, my parents wanted to take one more trip back to Wisconsin to see my oldest brother. Dawn, of course, stayed at the house. I left my best friend with him. All the way going back, I'm planning, my big brother's not going to let this happen. He won't let me get married at 16. He's got 3 girls. He wouldn't let this happen. And then somewhere on the trip, I figured out that I was pregnant. But still, I was pretty sure still Glenn wouldn't let me come back and get married at only 16. And I got there, and sure enough, he told Mom and Dad, let her stay here. She doesn't have to go back and get married. But then he came in the bedroom and he made a pass at me. Then Hope left. And the 16-year-old resigned to whatever's going to happen. She took over. A week before we were supposed to get married, he told me that, well, actually, he was married. And he hadn't just turned 21, he had actually just turned 25 or 6, I don't remember. And that we could do one of 3 things. We could either go and tell my parents, and they would have him arrested for statutory rape, or we could go on and get married, but then he would end up getting charged with bigamy. Or we could just quietly move in together, since nobody was coming to the wedding anyway, like it wasn't going to be a thing, and pretend like we had gotten married, and then he would quietly get his divorce, and then we'd get married quietly later. Guess which one I picked.
They didn't get married when my mom was pregnant with me. He was already married and had a wife and 3 kids. Then at some point after I was born, I believe the 3 kids came and lived with Mom, but I don't remember any of that.
Tammy was born, he had not gotten a divorce. The only thing that had changed is his 3 daughters. His other 3 daughters had come to live with us. So I was 17 years old and the mother of 4. That was fun. What I discovered was that if you're 17 and you have 4 children, all calling you mommy, you can go into any liquor store you want to and buy anything you want. And so that's what I did. I could drink all day long, it didn't matter. And so, most of the time I was pretty well lit. And then I just was done. I couldn't do it anymore. And she left on, moved right into that 1-bedroom mobile home with my parents. And Tammy and I set up our bedroom in the living room. I was angry. I know now who that was. She carries a lot of rage, but she's done amazingly well in therapy later. 17-year-old isn't as noticeable as she used to be. Used to be, my daughter especially could tell you, she knew when 17-year-old. If I say F this and F that, that's pretty much 17-year-old. You know that she's real close to the surface. And there are times that she still does that. Hello. I have an appointment with Jason at 11. I'm Mary Robinson, and I have to cancel that. I'm sorry. I just got the alert and I had forgotten that I had it, and I've got a presentation in my class. I just, thank you. Even though the motivational speakers are out there working with corporations so that they'll learn how to adjust for the millennials that are coming along, it hasn't completely happened yet. We still have those traditionalists and the baby.
Everybody thinks that my mom's Sybil changes, but she doesn't. I mean, in the beginning, sure, I couldn't tell, I didn't know, but sure, I remember as a kid, there were days when she'd wake me up and we didn't go to school that day. But as far as picking out who's who, when she talked to me the other day about Hope watching Twilight, I don't know who Hope is. I've not talked to Hope. Or maybe I have and I don't know. I don't look for who she is. I definitely know when she's Hermit. And I know to leave her alone. A Hermit will result to hurting my feelings to make me leave her alone. She just needs time alone. I still take her food. I still call and say, "Are you hungry? I made this." and I'll take it to her. But then I know to just leave it and go. And then she'll call me in a couple days and it'll all be fine.
So I was single until Tammy was 3. Then I met Bill. He and I got married. He was fine at first, but then he started being really angry. In fact, we were over at Jim's in his wife's house for dinner one night. And he and Jim went somewhere. It's the strangest thing. And my sister-in-law and I stayed and washed up the dishes and all that. When they came back, Bill stayed out in the car, revved the motor, honked and all this. I at first didn't want to go out there, but then he came in and got Tammy out of bed and carried her out. Well, then I had to go. He's going so fast and he goes flying over these railroad tracks. And I kind of shoved him on his shoulder and said, "Slow down, for Christ's sake." And he socked me so hard. I had never been hit like that. Every other kind of abuse, but never physical like that. And it stunned me, and I didn't know what to do. And I got home and got Tammy, and I put her to bed. And he just kept hitting me. And I should have left then. I should have left then. So I was working at the cannery night shift. So all he had to do was stay there while Tammy slept. And then the babysitter would bring her to me in the afternoon. But the babysitter woke me up banging on the door. She said that Tammy was really fussy, which wasn't like her. So I went and ran a cool bath, because it was like 105 or so. It's Stockton, California, really hot in the summertime. So I ran a cool bath, and when I went to take her clothes off, she was black and blue from her shoulder blades down to her knees. And I knew I'd stayed too long. So I just bundled her up and we went to Mom's. And because Mom could feel sorry for Tammy. She and Tammy had bonded. And since Tammy had the bruises, it was okay.
We don't ever discuss what might have happened to me, did or didn't. I don't care. I don't remember it. I don't want to know. Mom's right. Mom says someday it might all just flood back and it could just turn my life topsy-turvy. And when that happens, we'll deal with it. But right now, she's my best friend. Do I really need to remember how it was? I don't.
They're starting us off with a special case, and I'll tell you why. To get rid of the radical, you square both sides. If I square this, then the radical would drop off. But I can tell by looking at that equation that there's no answer. And the reason is the square root of something can't equal a -4. The square root is never going to be equal to a negative number. Square root of 16 is 4. Square root of -16 doesn't exist. So there's no answer here. So if you go through the problem and you square root.
I've always been an artist. Always signed Clarice. Even when I was a little girl, secretly we drew. And sometimes going to college, we'd sign Clarice up for an art class, thinking she would really enjoy this. Because she's done a lot for all of us. And then she wouldn't take it. She doesn't really like all the rules from art classes. But these were very unusual for us. Clarice just got the images and just did them, not really knowing where they came from or anything. I call this my self-portrait. I just did it. I didn't know. Clarice does this. We knew there were more, but not consciously. We don't consciously know this, not at this point. We just had to do this picture.
You didn't know that there were altars at all?
No, had not been diagnosed. This was in 1990.
What did you think was happening?
I just thought I was crazy. What are you going to do with it? Where are you taking it? When Tammy was 6, we went with the carnival. We lived in Angels Camp, and they have the Frog Jump Festival up there. Some guy there said, "Hey, when we leave town on Monday, why don't you guys come with us?" I thought, sounds good to me. Tammy and I went home. I packed up a little bit of stuff, took it to a friend's house, packed up my car, took our cat named Dog. Tam and I went with the carnival when it left. I knew it wasn't a lifetime pursuit, but it was for a summer. What you gonna do? Tammy often said, "God, it is so much fun to live at the fair. So much fun to live at the fair." But Tammy fell in love with this guy. Just thought he was the best thing ever. So he and I got married. My grandmother later said, "Mary, you've got to stop trying to find a dad for this girl." Got married. I don't remember even where. That lasted until we got home from the carnival. Pretty soon he decided I wasn't for him. I was pretty much in agreement.
Mom's attractive and she's full of life and a lot of fun, and I get that, but she's not that every day. I know how to deal with her and I know when to leave her alone, but I don't think other people do. She can go along for a long time and then Hermit comes or Mother comes and
Mother's wonderful. Mother makes a home for us. Anything that is homey is from Mother. There are times that she doesn't show up because she doesn't go to school. By the time you balance everybody, she doesn't. She's just not always here. And then she gets resentful when it gets really bad here. But what can I say?
there's been times that I would say, "Okay, Mom, you have the car, you're gonna pick me up from work," and she would never come. I'd call and say, "Mom," and she'd say, "What?" I said, "What are you doing?" "Oh, just sitting here on my computer." I'm like, "I'm at work and you were gonna come get me." "Oh yes, I was. She has no idea what I'm talking about. Absolutely zero recollection of what we discussed. And we might have just talked about it the night before. Doesn't happen so much now. Now she's really good. She writes everything down, puts a reminder in her phone. She hasn't forgotten me in years. But there were times when I was younger, or we were younger, that I would just be standing there waiting, and she just totally forgot. I had made the arrangements with someone else, not with whoever was there.
I don't know that people are ever monos. You have different moods. And, you know, whatever your role is, whether you're the employee or you're the parent or the significant other or whatever your situation, you have different parts that interact in those situations. The thing about being a multiple, though, is that, see, I don't have shared information. That's what the difference is. Everybody might have parts, but I don't have shared information between mine. Clarice is the artist. But the rest of us do good with stick figures. 17-year-old does great on the computer, and the rest of us can usually do email. Well, except Mother and Hermit, they don't do even email. But, you know, that's what I mean. There's not, and they don't know. If I were out and about and had helped somebody, 17-year-old had helped somebody with a computer program or something, or shopping for a computer or something, she's very good at that. And I were out and saw them, and they said something to me about the computer, the rest of us would look real stupid because, you know, we wouldn't have a clue what they were talking about. It's kind of like talking to the rest of us about types of paper for drawing and stuff. Is that cold pressed? Is that hot pressed? Is that, you know, the rest of us are going, you know. So without having shared information, it can get kind of sticky sometimes. One of my carny friends, well, it turned out that her husband had a brother. And this man just wanted to take care of us, make all of the misery go away. And I was like, okay, sounds good to me. It was like going to a sanitarium somewhere. I went into total retreat. He worked, of course, during the day. I slept in the day. I would get up in the afternoon, evening, and I would start sewing. I sewed something like 65 outfits for Tammy that Christmas. I never went to the grocery store, I never did anything around the house, really. I didn't do anything except I did crafts. A lot of crafts, and watched old movies on the TV. I hated Sunday night because they didn't go all night. It's terrible. And I didn't care what it was. It just was noise, and I could stay up all night doing sewing and stuff. He didn't really say too much. Well, what could he say? He said he was going to take care of me. He was 30 years younger than he was.
What was his name?
I'm trying to remember what his name was.
I have it.
All of a sudden, I was sitting up, drinking a cup of coffee, and I looked around, and I went, what the fuck am I doing here? What is this? So I packed a bag and we left. I was gone. Other than going back and getting some things later, and he negotiated with me, either my wedding ring or Tammy's canopy bed set. I could have one, but not both. So I gave him the wedding ring, took her canopy bed set. It was a lot of crazy thinking. Like one of those little animals on those wheels, and you're just running as fast as you can to try to keep up.
My mom's relationship with me formed the human being I am. Her relationship with Joe, Jim, Bob, whatever, was her relationship with them, but it didn't affect our relationship. We were together. It was us. So whether we lived here or over there or with this guy or that guy or this girl or in this, it didn't matter because I was with her. But the whole time, these people were taking her away from me. She's mine. She'll always be mine. She might have a relationship with you, but when it comes down to brass tacks, she's mine.
I went to several counselors because I knew there was problems. And I would tell them how crazy I was feeling and how different I felt sometimes. I had lists. I had lists of what it was like, how I felt before. Because like I would wake up. I would wake up one morning and I would just feel different. And while I could still remember how I had been feeling, even though I didn't feel that way anymore, while I could still remember it, I would write these lists. How I felt about sex, how I felt about politics, my favorite color, all this stuff. I could see it was so different. So I would take these things to these counselors and I would say, what do you think of this? Is this crazy or what? Well, you know, we all change our mind and everything. I say, overnight? You just wake up and all that stuff has changed? Well, sometimes you've been working it out. It works out in your subconscious while you're sleeping and stuff. And I go, okay, but, you know, didn't make sense to me. I'd come home shopping and find a bag that had like 2 bikinis in it. And I was a little beyond the bikini time of my life. And I would find short skirts, and I had done mini skirts when they first came out. You know, pantyhose came out so you could wear mini skirts, so I had done that. But I was a little too old to do that. I was 40, I think. But I would find these bags, and they had all this crazy stuff, makeup and sparkly stuff, and I would go, where in the world did it? I would ask my roommate, is this your bag? She'd go, no, that's not mine. You brought that back. I said, I brought this back? God, that was weird.
We all have them. Thank you both. I've kept you out in the sun long enough. They walked to the small...
For years, up until here in the last probably 10 years, is when I stopped feeling that I had to take care of her. And it was really hard, you know, feeling that there was no one else. When she was arrested and I was on the side of the road crying, I'm 16, and the cop comes up to me and he says, oh, it's okay, honey, we'll find a place for you. I said, I'm not worried about me. Who's going to take care of my mom?
In April of 1980, I was arrested. I had been embezzling for 14 months from my employer, and I was just in a really strange place. I had asked my boss for a loan, and he said he didn't have the money. Well, I was the office manager and bookkeeper, so it was really hard for him to tell me that. And my head was, damn it, he owed this to me. I worked hard, I did all this stuff. And at first, it's only going to be a little thing, and you're going to pay it back. But, then more emergencies come. That's how these things happen.
I didn't know why we had so much money. I just know we lived on 10 acres and we had horses.
Pickup and 4-horse trailer and saddles.
Life was milk and honey. Mom would go to the liquor store and buy me sloe gin, and I'd make sloe gin fizzes at home. It was good life, I thought.
Tammy was 17, so I was getting real nervous that she was going to leave. So I not only had to buy saddles and horses for her, but I had to make sure there were horses and saddles for her friends so they could come and it would be okay, I mean, you don't want them to have to go somewhere else to be entertained. They have to be able to bring their friends there.
It wasn't until she got caught that I found out, because I woke up that morning and she was crying in the kitchen. I said, Mom, what's wrong? She said, sit down, and she told me. And I said, well, we can do this, this, or this. Run for Mexico, turn yourself in. I forget what the third one was. And we decided to go to Mexico, driving a brown truck, hauling a blue 4-horse trailer, because nobody was going to notice that. Well, we didn't get very far.
You had to have a certificate to cross state line with animals. So we had to go to the vet. That's what we were waiting for. But the police had found out that that's where we were.
And they arrested Mom right there on the street. And that's when the cop came to me and said, oh, don't cry, it's okay, we'll find a place for you. And I wasn't crying for me, I was crying for her. Who was going to take care of her? Who was going to get her contact solution ready? Who was going to have her coffee ready when her eyes popped open in the morning? I mean, who was going to do all that? Who was going to help her along? I did all that. I was just counting the days till my mom got out of jail. All I wanted was for my mom to get out of jail.
I didn't want to get out. Where was I going to go? I'd have to go out and face people. I didn't want to do that.
She got out and we were sitting at the table and I was talking to her and I was waiting for her to say, okay, let's go, you and me against the world. And she sat there and told me she couldn't take care of me now because she had to take care of her. It was the hardest thing in the world for me. I never imagined a time when her life wouldn't have room for me.
My daughter was 18 when I stopped drinking, so she had gone through all the worst with me already.
While I was in the Air Force, I went to Japan. She got married and we were just really disconnected. She was going through a lot sobering up and I was going through a lot with my life and yet we weren't going through it together. It was the only thing I'd ever done I hadn't done with her. That's why I moved her to Japan through the US mail, because I needed her.
I was robbed of my childhood, and I know I robbed my daughter of hers. And that's something I can never give her back. But we try now as Tam's mom and Nana to be there for her, my grandchildren, and now my great-grandchildren.
And move. All right, you ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Whitney. Happy birthday to you.
Had my mom not been sober when I had my kids, our relationship might have been a whole lot different. It probably would have been. But my mom had been sober and I wanted to share. I mean, she was my wife when I raised the girls because I wasn't always married and I needed someone to do the things I couldn't. And in exchange, I took care of her. But there was more of a change for me when she sobered up than when she got diagnosed with multiple personality disorder.
When I was, I think, 4.5 years sober, I got married again. I married a man that was also a sober man. The nice thing about Earl was we got to go on a cruise. It was the first time I got to go on a Caribbean cruise. And so we went to the captain's, I think it's the first night or something after you go out. You go to the captain's party. It was kind of cool.
I think you mentioned that you noticed that there's a different person here.
Yeah, very different. This one has such dark hair. I never did anything to my hair except cut it. So
who do you think that was? Might have been.
This was more like Ms. Ms is one that didn't suffer abuse. Can do almost anything, any place. Handle herself quite well, meet new people. She can do a lot of stuff. She's kind of, we call on her, get through difficult things. But, it was my usual thing, September to December, January. That was a pattern. I didn't necessarily identify it as a pattern. That's just the way things worked. I'm sure that it had something to do with things that happened in my childhood, times of the year that things happened and stuff, but I don't know. After 5 years of sobriety, all the feelings I'd suppressed since childhood came flooding back. Before that, I could sit down and talk to you about being an incest survivor intellectually. I could talk about, how terrible it was, how wrong it was, that, but I had no feelings. And people would say, "Oh boy, you've really worked through this. This is amazing. You can just talk about this," and I go, no big deal, right? Mm-hmm. No big deal. That was a long time ago. That was then, this is now. I just want to live my life, right? But then I was driving down the road one day, and it was like this door opened inside, and there were all those feelings. And it hit me so strong, I had to pull over the side of the road. And I cried, and I never cried. I just didn't cry. I just couldn't cry. And I had this fear inside that I wasn't going to survive. If I kept letting people see how tender I was, how they could hurt me, I wasn't going to survive. And I became obsessed with the idea of suicide. Eventually, I checked myself into the hospital for depression. What else do you call it? Did about a week in-house, and then I was supposed to go to this outpatient program. Every day you go for hours and hours. And so I went every day, and there were things like, there were visiting counselors that would come in, and they would do things like on grieving, and on being assertive and this kind of stuff. And I would sit through all this stuff, and you were supposed to give input and everything. Well, after like a week and a half of that, I know now, it was a 17-year-old showed up. 17-year-old has always been useful. So when the nurse asked me at check-in how I felt that day, I said, "I feel fucking terrible. I want to know what in the hell any of this has to do with me." And so she said, "Oh, let me call Dr. Forrest and see if we can't get her over here." And so Dr. Forrest came over, and she said, "What seems to be the problem?" I said, "None of this has anything to do with me. Assertive, hell. You want me to be assertive? I'll be assertive. Grieving, who cares, you know? What does this have to do with me? How is this going to help me? What is going to help me? And she said, well, you know all those tests you took when you were in the hospital? I said, yeah, I have never heard anything about those. What's the use of doing all this stuff if you don't tell me anything? And she said, well, whoever took those tests, whatever part of you took those tests, was illiterate. And so from this and from several interviews with you, she said, Mary, you have multiple personality disorder. And I went, what does that mean? Yes, I get stuff in the mail and I don't know anything about it. Well, that's kind of like the newspaper I'm getting. I get Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday. I don't know who ordered it or why. We've never opened one of them. We don't have much call for the Columbus paper. But we're getting the Twilight movies right now.
Do you think you ordered the Columbus paper?
No, I didn't, but somebody, one of my alters did, obviously.
Really?
I don't know why they were thinking that we needed to. I have a vague recollection of going into some store one day in like Lancaster, and there was some guy that was promoting subscriptions to the paper.
And you think you bought it?
I think I must have, because I'm getting it. But why, I don't know, because I didn't want it. But that happens sometimes. I started seeing her twice a week. Each session was 2 hours. And oh my God, the switching. I had never been aware. I mean, I'd written those before and after lists and stuff because it just seemed crazy to me. I wanted somebody to explain how you can do this. But sitting in her office, there would be switching. And I felt it. It was so strong. She got to where she could recognize who walked in, which was really cool.
How? By the way they were talking?
Yeah, by the way they walked, by the way they strode, by the way they dressed. And they all wanted to come and talk to Dr. Forrest because they wanted to be identified, to be, yeah. Dr. Forrest helped identify the most obvious ones. 15-year-old, 17-year-old. The 15-year-old really likes to write. I have stacks of papers that we've written and gotten great grades on in the past. I have stacks of old papers, stacks of them. Psychology, she really likes to write about psychology and stuff. She's written some really interesting, I read them and I go, I can't believe that she came up with this stuff. She's very good. But she's the one that's all she ever wanted to do was go to school. All she ever wanted to do. I wish the 15-year-old would show up right now. And eventually she will before this paper's done. She's just not here right this minute. Mommy was developed after we were in therapy. Mommy protects the little ones. Her other function is to pretty much protect all of us from Mom. Mom is my mother. We lumped all of the negative messages together and we just called him Mom. I'm feeling rather stressful this quarter in school. And all of a sudden I realize that I'm self-talking, that I'm telling myself that I'm not going to do well, that, you know, I've made it on Dean's List now for 5 or 6 quarters in a row, and I know I'm not going to make it this quarter, and it's there. And you don't always consciously, you're not always aware that you're self-talking, that your negative self-talk's going. But what we do is when we realize that that's what's happening, we say, who in the fuck let you out of your cage? Get back. Nobody asked you for your opinion. And it'll stop, because that's Mom. That's where all of that comes from, that we're not worth it, that we can't do it. And so that's how we deal. This all came when we were very first seeing Dr. Forrest, in helping us define who the alters were, how many there were, how they fit together. She stressed how important it was to know what an alter's function in the system was, what they gave to the system, what their value in the system, and how they made everything run. She helped from the inside out how this was supposed to be. This is who we are. We as a functioning group, that's who we are. We are Mary. It's been kind of busy around here, everybody moving out. I always am glad at this time that I'm not on the same kind of lease as they are. Does that braid look okay back there? Mm-hmm. It finally is long enough so that I can braid it. This is one of the things that reasons I let it grow is because I like to braid it. If I concentrate, I can do the cornrow thing too, so that it sticks out instead of in. After we started seeing Dr. Forrest, we took it as almost like sobriety, as recovery, that we didn't create any more alters just because something was difficult. We actually worked our way through it with therapy or whatever, but we worked our way through it without having to create some other alter to do it. We'll be back. We might take the pickup, I don't know. Tammy likes to be in charge, driving.
Yeah, ironing that, a joy. I enjoyed it.
What was the matter with it?
It doesn't give you any instructions as to what the material is, and so I didn't want to burn it, and it's...
Catch on fire nylon.
Yeah. Burn you
No
fast.
smoking.
Nylon. Do you need a sip of something before we go? Here, I got a baby glass.
You got it.
Here.
Okay.
Do you have gum? That was a sharing glass.
Cool. No, I don't have gum, but I do have my cell phone so that afterwards I can holler at you. And I am going to leave this in the car, but...
Do you want me to bring gum? Did you pack the gum in the purse?
I put everything I thought was essential in your purse.
You didn't pack the trash?
Silly me.
After 3.5 years, that was when my daughter and son-in-law decided to leave California. And I talked over with Dr. Forrest and thought about it and decided I'd live with them. And what happened during that time was the individual ones stopped taking over. They stopped being individual. They started kind of forming, I kind of call it spontaneous blending. They kind of started forming these groups. I can still feel different ones at times, but I went through a long period of mourning because, I mean, the power of the 17-year-old was something we used often. Ms., who didn't go through abuse, we used her a lot. Miss Efficiency, she paid the bills. If it wasn't for her, you know, we'd just be buying bikinis and throwing money away. So they're still around. I can still feel them, but not like it used to be, because we've never had a doctor since then that really addressed the individuals. And I've always felt real sad about that.
When I said to you at graduation, look, I'm the only mom that ironed their kids' graduation gown. It's true, I did. You know, and you look around and all those other kids and all I could do is feel sorry for them because their mom didn't love them enough.
All you can do is feel sorry for those kids.
Because I loved my kid enough to iron her clothes, to make sure she looked great.
There?
Yep. How's it feel?
Okay.
I mean, she is my mom, but I take care of her. I make sure she eats, and she has a little bit of pocket money. And if she needs, I provide, like mom.
There is your color.
You can't spend your whole life being told that you can never leave because there'll be no one to take care of her, and then let her leave.
Jamie Lynn Kretz.
Kristen Elizabeth Wickham.
Olivia Kaylin Galbraith.
Allison Catherine Soderberg.
Caitlin Marie Sesko.
Andrew Arthur Sigrist.
Patrick Stephen Beaman. Estes.
Mary Clarice Robinson.
Congratulations,
Molly Esther Ross. Lyra Morgan Neff.
Anthony Joseph Romaine.
John Dodd.
I'm glad to be done with the school. I am glad.
She's gonna watch Twilight.
God, I've been watching that for, I don't know who is watching it. Oh, it's horrible. I've got the 4 movies, you know, so.
Oh, do you?
So whoever it is or what group it is, they watch them one after another over and over and over and over. And then I've got the books all on CD, so then we alternate and listen to the books. I haven't watched regular TV since, well, it was real hard for me to take the time